All right, so let's talk about the most important mailbox ever and why it had such a profound effect on my life, especially with respect to persuasion and also with being surrounded by people who just don't necessarily want the best for you, but rather for them. This is partially related to energy vampires, but also it is a lesson for you and I guess for me. Well, not I guess, I know for me to realize that any action you have will have consequences, whether you like it or not. Here's what I mean. So, when I was a teenager, I think I must have been some 12 or 13 years or so on, or some such. I had two older cousins. Both of them I sort of like looked up to because they were bigger than me, older than me, stronger than me. I thought that they were very, very knowledgeable, very, very skilled, very, very insightful. They, of course, mocked me and made fun of me and ridiculed me, and I desperately wanted to be their equal. You know, when you, it's kind of like when you have a big brother or something, you want to be as good as him or better than him, right? Well, I didn't have any big brother, but I had these big cousins, and to some degree, those worked, or they functioned in, I guess, partially as my big brothers, although they weren't my big brothers, but whatever. I guess those were the closest relatives I had to a big brother, you could say. So, and here's an important thing as well. Because I only saw them for a couple of times a year, or maybe 3 or 4 times a year, because they lived on the totally opposite end of the country, then I didn't spend so much time with them that I could see their flaws. In my mind, they were like perfect. Everything they did was perfect, right? Which obviously isn't the truth, right? They're all flawed. I'm flawed, and they're flawed. And, looking back at them nowadays, I'm like, yeah, I don't know what I saw in those two guys, really. Now, that doesn't mean that I want to speak ill or make fun of them in that regard, but it does mean that they were far from perfect then, and they're surely not perfect now. Anyway, let's get to the point here. So, I had bought some firecrackers that I wanted to play around with. My cousins were visiting for the summer. Now, keep in mind, I grew up in a small town. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew who I was. Nobody knew my cousins, right? They were just visiting. They were just staying there for a few weeks or whatever, and then they would go back to each of their respective towns. So, they coerced me. They convinced me into taking one of my firecrackers that I bought myself, but that I didn't plan on doing anything bad with, to blowing up a mailbox just for fun. And, me being sort of like the tiny little brat, if you like, the little, what's the word I'm looking for here? The little, I'm at a loss for words. I hate it when this happens. Me being just the little innocent, frail, the least or the smallest of the cousins, I guess. I wanted to, I didn't want to be down there. I wanted to be up here or above there. And so I thought, if I say yes to their request, that is taking one of my firecrackers and blowing up the mailbox, then I will be cool and they will look up to me. Well, long story short, we ended up doing it, or I ended up doing it, really. Or really, it wasn't even me. I gave the firecracker to my older cousin because I didn't know how to operate those firecrackers properly. So he did it, but it was my firecracker, and I sort of like agreed to it all after having been coerced and tricked and really manipulated into it, if you would like. So we blow up the mailbox, it becomes this huge thing. My parents know about it. I get, of course, all the blame. I'm being regarded as the bad guy. And I get all the responsibility. I have to pay for the entire thing. It didn't cost much, like $20, right? But and the money didn't matter, or excuse me, the money didn't have so much an effect that time, and it probably still wouldn't have had. But what had a profound effect was the fact that, number one, I'm actually being coerced and tricked and manipulated by my bigger cousins into doing this silly thing. Number two, I'm sort of like the face of this whole bad deed, whilst my cousins sort of like could just walk away silently. And number three, there's a consequence for every single action. And the consequence was, of course, well, I needed to apologize. It was so embarrassing. I needed to apologize to everyone, like, because they would have this gathering, this family gathering, and I needed to apologize to everyone. It was so embarrassing. And then also I needed to pay for the mailbox, and then also, of course, I wasn't allowed. Why can't I talk today? I wasn't allowed to play more with the firecrackers. Now that taught me a lot of stuff. There are so many persuasion lessons here, but what it taught me the most was stop idolizing other people, and certainly stop doing things that you know is wrong just to impress them. This goes to show you how persuasion can be used as a tool, as a double-edged sword, to make others do the ill bidding for you by regarding yourself as above, as superior to somebody else. Oh, if I can trick this little guy here into doing this bad stuff, he's gonna think that he's my equal or my superior, but he'll never be my equal or my superior. Really, I'll always feel superior to him, and now I can take advantage of that and make him do all the dirty work, right? Whether that is tricking your younger cousin into blowing up a mailbox, or making somebody do something illegal, tricking an older person, even if you're a child, into buying you liquor or even drugs or whatever. This just goes to show you the dangers of persuasion when it's used immorally and unethically. And of course, you don't want to do that. You want to do persuasion the proper way and making money ethically, legally, and morally. So that'll be the persuasion lesson for the day. And no, I haven't blown up any mailboxes since. I'll never do it. And there's a lot of persuasion lessons to learn here. If you want to learn more about persuasion, then get subscribed to my email list. The link to do so is in the episode description, wherever you're watching or listening to this. And I'll see you there.